Alright guys, so this is a big one. The trade war isn't over just yet. Over the last 2 weeks, we saw a barrage of tariff punishments on the world. But this latest move is simply crazy. It's going to threaten one of the last few trump cards the US has. And we aren't talking about just economic power but geopolitical power as well. Donald Trump is moving to impose a 25% tariff on vehicle imports, pharmaceuticals, and chips. Now, these critical imports are about to get more expensive. The cars that you buy and medicine prices, they are about to fly up higher. But I want to focus on semiconductors today because Trump is going to bury America's chances of winning the tech race. In 2023, the US manufacturing trade deficit hit an incredible $1.2 trillion. Compare that to China, that has a manufacturing trade surplus of $1.8 trillion. The bigger this deficit gets, it pushes the US economy towards catastrophe, and it also destabilizes the US dollar. If the world keeps buying stuff from China, the dollar as a trade currency will continue to slip away. In addition, the US will be extremely dependent on global imports, not really a good situation to be in. Trump wants to reverse that. Now, we have heard him say time and time again he wants to bring manufacturing back to the US, but it won't be easy. Now, firstly, no one is buying US cars, and catching up with China will take years, if not decades. Secondly, the cost of manufacturing is extremely high in the US, so cheaper goods are out of the question. And that's why Trump's real agenda is to double down on the technology and AI wars.
Reduce the cost of virtually all goods and services. It'll make the United States a manufacturing superpower and the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto.
This is one area that the US can't afford to lose because if they do, the entire US economy will lag behind the world, especially when China is going around giving countries free AI with DeepSeek. To protect the dollar, US industries and overall investment demand in the US economy, Trump has to win the AI race. Now, just a week ago, we had Trump telling TSMC to run Intel's US factories, which is a big deal. TSMC is the world leader in chip making. Companies like Nvidia, they all rely on them to make chips. They send their orders to Taiwan, the semiconductors get made there and then shipped back to the US. This isn't an easy request at all. TSMC is a pure manufacturing company while Intel designs and makes their own chips. So integrating them together will be a big massive headache. Now if we combine Trump's demands with his 25% tariff, things get much clearer. AI chips are perhaps the only advantage the US has left against China when it comes to industry.
Be placing tariffs on foreign production of computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to return production of these essential goods to the United States of America. They left us and they went to Taiwan, which is about 98% of the chip business, by the way. They didn't need money, they needed an incentive, and the incentive is going to be they're not going to want to pay a 25, 50, or even 100% tax. They're going to build their factory with their own money. We don't have to give them money. They're going to come in because it's good for them to come in. The only way you'll get out of this is to build your plant. If you want to stop paying the taxes or the tariffs, you have to build your plant right here in America. That's what's going to happen at record levels.
Forget about shipbuilding, the Chinese dominated. Don't bother about EVs today. The world is flooded with Chinese cars. So the only way left, the only outlet is the US making hardware for AI itself, advanced chips. So Trump's 25% tariff is extremely severe. The plan is to punish allies including Taiwan and South Korea to relocate their production facilities to the US, which is quite funny. There's no carrot, there's only the stick approach, which is weaponizing, once again, the US consumer market, using economic policy to force geopolitical outcomes. Now, in his utopian vision, America would be producing the world's most cutting-edge chips on US soil itself, and that will force everyone to deal with the US. It would help the US be an export economy once again, without restrictions on pricing. US chipmakers can sell the chips at whatever price they deem fit. This is the AI value chain we have to understand. While we all get to play with ChatGPT, Grok, and DeepSeek, those are the final products at the end of the line. The US wants to control the hardware portion, the beginning of it, the start of the entire AI value chain. They have Nvidia that designs the chips, and what's left is to get companies like TSMC to set up physical production in the US. So any country in the world that wants to build their AI models will have to rely on chips from the US. At least that's the plan Trump has for the world. The US is the world leader in sanctions, and their innovation there is unmatched. If they manage to corner AI hardware production, the world will be held hostage. During the Biden administration, we all saw a glimpse of the grand plan. The US will carve up the world into different regimes, their allies and adversaries, which kind of reminds me of the old colonial days. The US placed countries into three categories, separating the global economy into allies, enemies, and the rest. If you're in blue like Canada, Japan, and Australia, you can get near unrestricted access to advanced US chips. However, countries like China, Russia, and most of the world, they will be in Tier 2 and Tier 3. And that will mean massive restrictions on getting the AI chips they want. So it's like a productivity cap on your country's economy. Do you see the end game now? We get to control how fast or slow your economy grows. The US plans to weaponize AI chips and have it closed sourced, so as to speak. And if you want to access these chips, you need to be in the US ecosystem. Now, that could mean a lot of things. It could entail telling you to cut off trade with China. It could mean forcing you to lower any tariff you have on US exports. AI chips will be the oil and gas of the future, and Trump, he wants to control it all. The US today has a crisis when it comes to debt sales. In a stunning admission, Besson told the world that the US can't issue any new long-term bonds. Why? Because global demand is already very weak. The world is demanding a higher yield because the US can't stop spending. Countries are afraid of not just sanctions, but of higher inflation eating away returns. And this is forcing the US to issue a ton of short term treasuries, which puts the national debt at the mercy of short term interest rates. And this is how unstable the financial system is today. The US can't lock in their interest payments for 10 to 30 years without sending long term yields to the moon, and that would destabilize the entire US economy itself. However, if you have a resource that everyone wants, like AI chips, the US can demand countries to buy US bonds. If you want to get Tier 1 status, you better start buying long term bonds from us. In fact, we'll need you to swap all your short term T bills for 100-year bonds that pay zero yield. That could happen. And that could be the bargain to access AI chips if the US gains a monopoly. However, it's not that simple as that. Firstly, making chips in the US is not really the best idea if you're looking to make competitive goods. According to TSMC's founder, Morris Chang, US efforts to increase onshore chip production are wasteful and expensive. Why? Because of high costs and the lack of manufacturing talent. Will TSMC reshore to the US? Well, not willingly. They have already laid out the issues. It doesn't matter if it's making chips in the Arizona desert plant or taking over Intel's factories. Sure, in the short term, Trump will win. A 25% tariff can force TSMC to relocate production to the US. Revenue from Trump's economy still makes up the lion's share. Over 65% of business comes from the United States. All other countries in the world combined is less than half of US revenue. So don't be surprised if TSMC moves into the US in a big way. However, that doesn't mean it's an open goal for the US. Firstly, it would hurt domestic AI companies. Building chips in the US would mean higher costs across the board, and that includes the inputs, energy, labor, and even land costs as well. US subsidies won't be enough, and Trump already said there won't be any rewards, just no punishments. According to Macquarie Bank, chips made in the US would cost 30% higher than those made in Taiwanese facilities. And if that's the case, it would be a disaster for both TSMC and US AI companies. For Taiwan, chips made in the US will be so uncompetitive that production can't be exported elsewhere unless they move everything there. But that will be a silly move, won't it? Taiwan will lose any leverage on the US if they do. For US AI companies, the consequences are even more dire. Guess who will be the biggest victims of this move? It would be companies like Nvidia and Apple. Now their chips will get more expensive and this will jack up costs and collapse profits. Now these next two charts are extremely important. It tells you why Trump's chip tariffs could backfire badly on US tech companies. Tech companies today spend a lot on their R&D and capex. Capex means capital expenditures, which shouldn't be a surprise when you are trying to make the latest AI models. If the cost of chips goes up, so does the cost of R&D and capex, and that puts a lot of pressure on the cash flow and income of US tech companies. It's not very complex. Take Meta for example. Zuckerberg expects to spend $65 billion on AI alone this year. Their capex is going to increase by an enormous 50% from 2024. And what do you need to build AI models, especially if you're doing it the American way? You want the most cutting edge chips from Nvidia that are made in Taiwan. Those alone will cause a bomb. If Trump forces production back to the US, guess what? The capex bill for all domestic tech companies will fly to the moon. It could even double or triple down the road, and this makes the final AI solution much more expensive. Fewer US companies in the whole economy can benefit from them. This basically puts Trump's economy in a tremendous disadvantage. China's going to develop their own chips, it's just a matter of time. But they will be able to do it at a much lower cost. And that means more Chinese companies can run harder and they can run faster than US firms. DeepSeek shows us how the future will play out. The model is top of the line, one of the best out there beating almost all benchmarks. But what's crazy is the cost. It's 5 to 10 times cheaper than other competitors of the same level. If Trump really imposes his tariffs on semiconductors, he will unleash a domino effect that will doom US companies. They will have to spend a lot more money to catch up with Chinese competition. Whatever China makes for a dollar, the US will have to spend 2 or even $3. But realize there are more layers to the story. Sure, a semiconductor tariff sounds great, but unless the United States solves the problem of supply chains first, it won't work. Weaponizing US chip production also won't be a very good idea. US chips will be so expensive that when China catches up, guess who will steal market share from the US? Chinese chips will. Countries banned from US chips will just buy Chinese alternatives, even if they are a generation or two generations behind. And that's the big blind spot Trump isn't talking about just yet. So there is a boomerang effect on the US economy. Sure, you can relocate some chip production and create thousands of new jobs. However, this alone could collapse the US tech sector, especially when it comes to AI. But let me know what you think. Will Trump's chips tariff really work? And how will the world react to this? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.